Hello and welcome back to the UK SIF Leadership Podcast COP26 series. It's Sally here on day 4 of COP26, and yesterday, Finance Day, gave us a lot to think about. UK SIF and our members look forward to actively supporting the effort to build a shared definition of a good quality transition plan and more broadly, a net zero finance sector. But today is Energy Day, and I'm joined by Mike Appleby from the Sustainable Investments team at Lion Trust and Matthew Clayton, Managing Director of Thrive Renewables, to discuss stewardship in the net zero transition.
Hello, it's James and Sally here to let you all know about our podcast sponsor.
This COP26 series of the UK SIF Leadership Podcast is sponsored by Lion Trust. We're delighted to have them involved. Lion Trust is a specialist fund management company that was founded in 1995.
And as of July 2021, they had £34 billion in assets under management. Their aim is to have a positive impact on their investors, stakeholders, and society.
We're so pleased to have them on board for this series. Without the support of our partners, the podcast would not be able to happen.
So, without further interruption, let's get on with the episode.
Matthew, Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you both here. So why don't we start with both of you saying a few words about yourselves and about your industry focus. Matthew, you're first on my Zoom screen, so I'll hand over to you to begin with, if that's all right.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, so my name is Matthew Clayton. I'm the Managing Director of Thrive Renewables. I guess, I've been with Thrive since 2006, which gives, some sense of our position in the renewable sector, I guess. Before that, I was part of a small team which originated and pulled together the first few emissions trades, global emission trades under the Kyoto framework. So the UNFCCC has been a big part of my life for a very long time. So in terms of Thrive Renewables, we are a renewable energy investment business. And we were founded 26 years ago. And I guess there's two legs to our strategy. The first is importantly contributing to the renewable energy transition or the energy transition. And secondly, it's allowing individuals and impact investors to be taken on that journey with us. So pulling together a large group of investors to contribute directly to bringing about change. So in that context, we've built about 27 renewable energy projects in the UK. We have a UK focus. Majority of that's been wind, but we've got solar and hydro in there, and we're currently building battery projects, geothermal projects, and more wind and solar, because we believe that's what the UK needs.
Thanks, Matthew. And Mike, I'll hand over to you.
I'm Mike Appleby. I'm part of the Sustainable Investment team at Lion Trust, and we run the Sustainable Future Funds. And these have been running. We just had our 20th birthday last year, I think it was. And my role is I'm part of the team that run that. And I really look at energy in its broadest sense, but also resource efficiency as well. And so we're really interested in finding companies that are the right side of this energy transition, and that are well managed, that we think are profitable and have a good chance of being worth a lot more in the future. And that's really what I spend my days doing.
Thanks both. I think let's just dive straight in with the first question, the first topic that I'd like to cover, which is, what do we mean when we say stewardship in the energy transition? Mike, I'll pass straight back to you if that's all right.
Well, I guess we're all aware of the stewardship code, and this started off that you had a responsibility to hold businesses to account, to make sure principally that they were governed well to begin with. Independent directors hadn't had the same auditor forever, and pay was aligned with all the usual kind of corporate governance stuff. But it also does include material risks like climate change, like the energy transition. And I guess the way people would typically project what they think is how they vote at annual general meetings for those that hold shares, or they engage with companies on particular issues that they think are material to encourage them to manage that better. So that's what we have here. But I think there is quite a broad spectrum of whereabouts you are on this. So there are some people who believe that it's very important to talk to big oil and energy companies to persuade them to become more renewable, and they think that's something that they want to do. There are another set of investors at the other end of the scale who really see those big oil companies as being completely the wrong side of the trend, and wouldn't really countenance holding them in their funds, and would much rather that their investment managers were looking at the much more innovative end of it. So there's a whole spectrum. Where we sit is more to the right. So I don't spend any time talking to BP or Shell or about how quickly they can become a renewables company. I'm much more interested in finding interesting, innovative companies that are doing things not dissimilar, in fact, exactly the same as what Matthew Clayton and Thrive Renewables are doing. So those are the kind of companies we're interested in. But there is like you'd have very different conversations in that stewardship area, if you like.
Matthew, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, we don't, the companies we invest in are project companies, so we invest directly into the renewable assets. So I guess in terms of the stewardship of the energy transition from our perspective is about demonstrating how it works and that it can be done and doing it in a responsible way. And for us, that's about taking the communities we work with us. It's about working with the supply chains that we that we contract with to make sure that they're credible and doing the right things. And also, I feel that as a B Corp, that wider stakeholder engagement, both at the social level, the environmental level, and the financial level, is really brought out of that B Corp process journey and the ongoing journey with B Corp. So I think that's really what it's about for us, and it's fundamentally about delivering the transition and showing how that can be done at a number of different levels.
And I know, Mike, you touched upon this earlier, but how can and should the industry more actively engage with energy companies, particularly those needing transition? I mean, it's always a difficult one, but we've seen great success from investors such as Engine Number One. Is there space for this to sort of be pushed further?
Well, I think those that are involved in this end of the scale, we are talking about the really big companies that need to essentially do the opposite of what they've been doing for the last 30 years, for the next 30 years. I mean, there's obviously, that's a very valid thing to do if you're happy to hold those, and it's great that that they are putting these companies under pressure, and I dare say that that's having a very positive impact. I guess the thing to step back and think about the energy transition, and something we've been thinking about a lot, is the pace of change. Now, if you think within our industry, some people think that it's totally fine to have a carbon reduction target that might be intensity based, so it's per unit or widget that you sell, or it might be something like 1% a year. But the real wake-up call is, we need to essentially halve our emissions by 2030 in absolute terms. And so I think what people really need to start doing is talking about this, which is a massive challenge, and getting companies to respond in a way that is consistent with what the science is saying. Because right now there are lots of companies with lots of strategies to reduce carbon, but a lot of them aren't really anywhere near what the science is asking us to do. And I can talk a little bit later on maybe about something that we've been doing, a 1.5 degree transition challenge, which is exactly that. And there are a few things we've learned from that. But I do think that investors having a chat with companies isn't good enough anymore. You need to be challenging companies to move at a pace that is consistent with what's going on. And I think no matter where you are on that spectrum, whether you're talking to, big energy companies that need to transition, or whether you're even talking to other carbon intensive companies, or even companies that typically haven't really had a lot of challenge on climate change because they're not viewed as one of the big emitting sectors. I think in those we really need to dial up our ambition, because when we look back in 2030, we want to have seen sort of 5% year on year absolute reductions in all the businesses that we're invested in. Now, not all of them are going to be able to do that, but that quantum has never been achieved before. So I think we need to not be fobbed off with vague intensity targets and stuff like that. We really need to get down to the nitty gritty and really say, how much are you going to reduce your direct emissions by 2025? And it needs to be in the order of 25%. Anything less than that is not good enough. And I think that saying net zero by 2050 is great. And it does provide some leadership, but unfortunately for some people, it also provides a bit of a get out of jail card, because 2050, well, I probably won't be here. I certainly will have retired. And net zero is a sort of nebulous term that can mean to some people that they don't need to do anything today. So it's really about absolute emission reductions. That's what the planet notices, doesn't really care if it's an intensity target. And this pace, we really need to challenge these companies, because the companies that can produce lower carbon products and services are going to survive and thrive in a world that is looking for those services. So, there's a business case here as well, as the obvious case of making sure that, you're not destroying the planet as sort of business as usual accidentally.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's a really interesting point. And I think sort of the active engagement is so important. But I think some organizations might hold they're doing engagement when in actual fact it's just sort of making them feel better about having those holdings. Matthew, do you have anything to sort of add to that?
Yeah, I guess from our perspective, we tend to work on the coal face of some of that in a way in terms of delivering net zero. So we've got a number of what we call private wire projects in our portfolio, where we've got commercial solar rooftops plugged straight into the industrial host, got wind farms plugged into the industrial host. And we're also developing a portfolio of projects which will be delivering solar directly to the railway network, to help decarbonize rail, which is already a more sustainable way to travel than most. So that's the way we interact with that. But I think what's really interesting for us is the change in the conversation. So we've been building these projects for 12 years now on that hosted basis. And net zero wasn't a thing that was discussed on those first few projects, but it was about power price, power security, and just doing the right thing. And what we're seeing increasingly is even before the net zero target, that a number of the businesses we're supplying actually win more business or secure business with their off-takers, with their customers, on the back of their environmental credentials. And I think that's only going to be reinforced by the net zero ambition and the pressure that's coming from both sides now, from upwards from individuals, the employees wanting to do the right thing, but also from the investors and the customers needing to know that the carbon credentials of the product they're consuming. And so we see it as a really exciting time, and that all coming together feels like a very powerful thing.
And what do you expect, or hope is potentially a better word, will come out of COP26 in relation to this discussion?
Matthew, shall I let you go first, because I seem to be hogging the limelight here, but I'm happy to go if you...
No, you're good. I guess that it's a tricky question to answer. My initial response to that is a tricky one to frame, in that I guess it's the proper and appropriate recognition of the urgency and the gravity of what we need to do would be a real first step. And I think certainly the press and the media around the COP is so huge and feels so global that it feels like that recognition's coming down the track, and so I take a lot of comfort from that. But I guess I guess in some ways I don't want this to be taken the right way, but I kind of draw some parallels with the COVID situation, in that like the furlough scheme, where did that come from? Nobody would have ever imagined anything like that. Such a fundamental intervention could take place until the emergency is in front of us. And I guess if there's one hope from COP, is that the gravity and urgency is in front of us, and we start thinking on that footing rather than as Mike says, the 2050 footing. And so that's one thing I'd really like to see happening. But I think also it's to give the national leaders the global confidence that everyone's in this together, which will then allow or the national leadership to take to take measures locally, which work for them locally, which deliver the impact that needs to be delivered. But that can only come if there's not that sort of protectionism and sense of losing competitive advantage for your country, because everyone's in it together. We might achieve it in slightly different ways and slightly different timeframes, but if there's that global sense of direction, urgency, and need, then it will give the national context the opportunity to provide industry and individuals with the confidence to actually deliver, which feels to me like would be a very positive win from this.
Yeah, I totally agree with Matthew. I mean, it's really critical, COP26. We want as much to come out of this as possible, but at the same time, bear in mind, this is the 26th Conference of Parties. There have been some that have been a bit of a damp squid. And I think going into this, being realistic, I think, expectations are not particularly high. Some of the biggest actors, China and Russia, don't even appear to be there. That's not to say that there haven't been some good things coming out. There's a great initiative on deforestation, reversing that by 2030. Critically, Brazil's involved with that. There's some good noises coming out of finance, and it's difficult to unpack that. It's a great initiative, but we need to see capital being reallocated away from the dirtiest parts to cleaner parts. So it'd be nice to see that come through. But what I would say is that in the event that less than we would have liked happens in COP26, it's not a major cause for concern, because we clearly want to do things as quickly as we can, but there will be global tightening of greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And whether it happens this COP or the next COP, there is a lot of stuff that's going on, despite the apparent lack of urgency coming from the national level. And I think it's interesting that Donald Trump was very anti-renewables, and yet in his tenure, more renewables were installed than ever in the history of America. And so, at the top level, we do want leadership, but there are some incredible things going on, particularly, renewables, for example, are super economically competitive now. They're the cheapest way to generate new green electrons. And I think that things like that the economics are changing, and these things are changing so quickly that, do not give up if you feel that COP26 hasn't delivered what you would have liked it to deliver, because there is a huge amount that's going on and will continue to go on. And for investors, critically, will affect how much companies are worth. And we need to, not think that if COP26 is disappointing, which I hope it won't be, but I've been here before, and sometimes when there's a disappointing COP, the press kind of go away from it. They struggle with a long-term story like this, but I think there is a huge amount going on, and of course we want as much positive stuff to come out of the COP as possible.
So, as you said, this is a climate emergency, which is right in front of us. The energy transition makes good business sense. So what's standing in the way of it? Do we have to accept that some sectors won't transition over time?
There are some sectors where it's going to be tough. There are some resource sectors, for example, that, are going to struggle. And I would say they're just going to take a little bit more time to innovate. We've seen some incredible, I haven't been following this super closely, but, there are some new uses of of green hydrogen and substitutes in steel manufacturing, etc., that, you know, were just pie in the sky 10 years ago. So there is stuff going on. I guess the point that people haven't quite taken on board, I don't think, in my conversations, is renewables are critical. It's key that we bring down the carbon intensity of the grid, and they're critical. But if a little elf went out and replaced all electricity generation with renewables tonight, and we woke up tomorrow morning, we would have reduced our emissions by about a quarter. So there's 3/4 of other stuff we need to do in transport, in heating and cooling homes, within industrial process, in agriculture and land use. And I'm not sure that everyone's quite worked that one out. And because you see a lot of policies that come out, and just by the fact of how the policy is written, it makes you realize that it's a little bit of a sticking plaster. So I think one of the things that is missing is a decent set of regulations that give the market a good signal. It's great that the UK are making the right noises, but you know, a lot of the things don't really stack up and are not even going to get us anywhere close to net zero by or even, you know, close to 50% reduction by 2030. But at the same time, there are all these other interesting things going on. And what I don't want to happen, and I sometimes hear this in conversations, is it's a bit like being very British and polite before going through a door. You know, the investors are going, oh, let the regulator go first. And the regulators go, oh, no, let the consumers go first. And the consumers are saying, oh, well, let business go first. And everyone's sort of milling around outside a room that we all need to really just get in and get on with with this energy transition. So I think it goes back to this sense of urgency, I think, the penny is beginning to drop. And because I think that explains there are people who believe climate change is a thing, but they don't feel that it's going to be material in either their immediate lifetime or their work, or critically in the investment time horizon that they're going to be holding a company. And I think that's something that people are, you know, looking down at the ground and missing the big picture out there. So I think that's something that will change. The last thing I'd say is that it's very confusing. Let's say you really want to do something about your carbon footprint and you're a consumer. What do you do? You know, and you read all sorts of conflicting things going on. So I think it's really tough to get good information on this as to what you should be doing to a certain extent. But I think within finance, people are getting it. But I think it is still that sense of urgency that what are we going to have done by 2025? I don't feel that everywhere I go, and we need to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess again from the challenges of building renewable energy projects and low carbon infrastructure, I guess what we see is, you know, the very real challenge is a 4-fold increase in electricity demand over the next 15 to 20 years. I mean, that's huge. That's, you know, because we're going to have to our heat is going to not be fossil fuel based, it's going to be electric based, and our transport's going to be electric based, as Mike touched on. So that kind of just the fundamental size of change that we need to bring about is a challenge in its own right. But don't think we should lose sight of the fact that, you know, over the last 25 years since Strive's been around, then we've gone from 2% of the UK's energy coming from renewables to over 40%. And so it's kind of phase one done, if you like. And now it's the whole, that we're not talking about the energy system, we're talking about the renewable energy system from here on in. And there's a lot of changes that need to be made on that. And I think that, yeah, again, Mike's point about that individual, what does an individual do, becomes very relevant in this next phase, because it's not somebody else's problem. You know, it is going to, the transition isn't just where you buy your electricity from anymore. It's how it's going to creep into your home. You know, how do you heat your house? You're going to have to rip out your gas boiler and do something different. And so, the way you travel needs to change. But I think if we can, we need we need it to feel like a carrot as opposed to a stick. This is an exciting challenge which we can embrace and do something positively about, all of us. And so, I guess, but from a just a strict policy perspective, some of the challenges we're facing at the moment is so that the government's principal tool for increasing the amount of renewables on the system from here on in is called the contracts for difference, which effectively provides a swap, if you like, for an energy price. So if the wholesale electricity market is above your swap price, you pay into that, and if it's below that, and you've got some price stability through the protection that offers. So it's a great tool for getting infrastructure projects built. But unfortunately, we're only given sort of a year to 18 months notice of when they're coming. And the gestation period of a renewable energy project, well, any energy infrastructure project is sort of like 2 to 5 years or something like that. So it's having that confidence that this is fundamentally how it's going to be, and then you go out and speak to the farmers, the landowners, the industrial host that's going to build you're going to build your next project. So I think that long-term certainty is what's would help an awful lot. And I know that's perhaps too much to ask, but I think that long-term picture is really important. So I think that would be the principal ask, and just really a catch up for domestic policy with the rhetoric would be helpful. So at the moment, there's still an effective ban on onshore wind in the UK, despite everything that's being said at COP, because local authorities can just say no to renewable energy to wind in England or England if it's not in the local plan. The local plans often last for 25 or 30 years. So renewables weren't really a thing at the beginning of a lot of these local plans. Simple fix, just embrace the change, get it in our local plans, move forwards.
One thing on the social dimension. So I think we can't forget that, in trying to achieve our climate goals, we can't forget about everything else. I have this thing about climate change goggles where someone only views a problem on one dimension, and we just need to be careful because we need to bring people with us. The jobs that were happening at, a coal place, that coal value chain, I know it's the pariah of, climate change people. But, those people need jobs, and we need to transition them into things. And also, we don't want to be in a situation where we're making fuel poverty, where people are spending a huge amount of what little income they have on energy. We don't want to make that worse in this energy transition. So while we're thinking about these things, we need to think about jobs. We need to think about, customers. We need to think about smarter ways where we can, cushion the potentially negative impacts that might stop this from happening in doing this energy transition. So just to give it that second dimension, because unfortunately, if we don't bring people with us and people don't want to do this isn't going to happen. And so that is critical as well. I think it does make it more complicated, but where there's a will, there's a way.
If we do it right, it will save electricity. The cost of energy will go down as a result of this, and exposure to things like the fossil fuel volatility that we're seeing at the moment just dissipates because we're not reliant on it anymore. And so, but that does require a really fundamental change in relationship between supply and demand, which is part of the transition that is the phase 2 we've described.
Awesome. Are there any energy sources which should seriously be considered as transition energy sources? Should we look at biomass and nuclear, or should these just not be considered at all?
Well, just really quickly, I think biomass does work if it's a waste product. I don't think it works if it's a primary product on huge scale. And then as far as nuclear goes, I am aware that the environmental lobby is kind of split on nuclear. There are some people that believe nuclear is critical if we're going to meet our climate change goals. And there are others that feel that nuclear really isn't the answer. I sit in that camp because I think that the cost of nuclear and how long it takes to build, particularly in the light of how economically competitive renewables are and how quickly then they get delivered mean that I think it's a distraction, and I don't think that we need to build out a huge amount of the grid that is nuclear. The other thing I would say is that what's become important is the flexibility of a power source, its ability to switch on and off. And as far as that goes, nuclear is not something that's responding really quickly and that you can switch on and off. It's something that is very much a baseload thing, which is less and less important as more and more renewables come on the grid. It's important that you're able to respond to what's going on. But I'm sure Matthew's got some views as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I agree with both those points. But with the biogas, I mean, we've got a wind farm which is placed on the four corners of a sewage treatment plant, and in situations like that, you've got a waste product there. There are, and it was very much like 15 years ago that was a waste center, but now it's an energy center because the gas is extracted from that process and used to generate electricity and even put green gas into the network now. But part of that heating process is then used to sort of pasteurize the waste so that it can go back on the land. And so then that's another source of energy that's being taken from that waste product. And clearly, if that gas capture wasn't happening, then it's methane being emitted into the atmosphere, which is in the short term a very potent greenhouse gas, as we've seen from the announcements yesterday. So I see, biogas where it's a waste, it's a genuine waste product. We're very supportive of that. We haven't invested in it, but we're supportive of it. And on the nuclear side, I think it really comes down to cost and speed. And if we look at effectively the CFD contract awarded to Hinkley C nuclear plant, that's nigh on threefold higher than is being awarded to renewable projects at the same time. So that's not helpful in terms of delivering a low cost energy system. And additionally, in the 2 years that it took to clear the land and for the foundations, not even to pour the foundations, but to arrange the land at Hinkley C, the renewable sector in the UK alone delivered enough new renewables to deliver the same volume of electricity annually as Hinkley will at some point in the future. So it's taken 2 years to build all of that renewable capacity, deliver that power. It's all live and delivering, and Hinkley's still pouring concrete, I believe. So it's speed and cost for me, that one.
Brilliant. Thanks both. I'm afraid we are out of time for today. This has been a great discussion. I think we've covered a huge amount of ground. So thanks again to Mike and Matthew for joining me. Big thank you to our sponsor, Lion Trust. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tune into our other episodes from throughout COP26. You can find us on Twitter at UKSIF, all one word. Speak soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much.